And Marissa, are you open? You see the participants starting to arrive. When we have like 2 or 3 minutes after the hour, you can start. Is that okay? We will disappear. You will open and we'll close the session. Is that okay, Marissa? You are on the spotlight now. Bye.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. We'll just wait a little bit for more people to join and then we'll get started. Okay, in the interest of time, I think we can get going. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Networking Fridays webinar on women empowerment in sustainable aquaculture as an early celebration of International Women's Day. This webinar, with about 200 registrations from 40 countries, is co-hosted by the Air Centre and the ASTRAL Project, where for those of you that haven't heard of us, ASTRAL stands for All Atlantic Sustainable, Profitable and Resilient Aquaculture. My name is Marissa Brink-Hull, and I will be moderating today's session, where we will be hearing about the experiences of some brilliant women in aquaculture across a diverse range of sectors, from international NGOs to industry, academia, and beyond. A little bit of background on me. I'm an ASTRAL postdoctoral research fellow and an All Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance Youth Ambassador. I am based in South Africa with the University of Cape Town in collaboration with Viking Aquaculture and the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. And together with our international consortium, we work on the ASTRAL Project, with the broader goal being to develop sustainable aquaculture across the Atlantic. And my research focus largely being on the microbiome associated with integrated multi-trophic aquaculture systems. To learn more about ASTRAL and what we are doing, I will also be putting a link in the chat. ASTRAL has also made a pledge to promote women's empowerment and mainstreaming in sustainable aquaculture in the Atlantic area. And more information on this will also be available in the chat, but one of our speakers should be speaking on this a bit later as well. So before we get started, I will just go over a couple of house rules. Firstly, all questions will be addressed in the end in the Q&A session after all the presentations. Secondly, please write the questions in the Q&A box and not in the chat box. And then lastly, for this session, we will be having a simultaneous translation for our Brazilian speaker. So if you need translation, please click on the globe and choose language. You should also see reminders for this in the chat. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Alice Ruhweza, the African Director for the Worldwide Fund for Nature. Alice has extensive experience in working at the intersection of conservation, development, and the environment in Africa and globally. She is also leading the design of a new conservation framework to bring together work at national and global levels. Thank you, Alice. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today, and especially as we're getting closer to Women's Day, to address the issue of women in aquaculture. I will share a few slides. Okay, I just want to make sure you can see my slides. Okay, you all have already introduced me. I'll just talk about just one slide to talk about what we do at WWF in Africa, particularly in the area of fisheries. WWF itself as an organization does a lot of work in fisheries, sustainable seafood, and everywhere around the world. But in Africa, our main focus mostly is in the Southwest Indian Ocean seascape. That's where it's one of our biggest landscapes. It combines large marine and coastal ecosystems which support 60 million people living in the coastal belt shared Mozambique, South Africa, Tanzania, and Kenya. It supports the world's largest sustainable tuna fisheries, 38% of the world's coral reefs, 5 of the world's 7 marine turtles, and 5% of the world's mangroves. And it has an economic output of about 20.8 billion annually, equivalent to the 4th largest economy in the region. And our goal there really is to try and to strive and achieve sustainable fishing in the land, the seascape. We're also, of course, protecting mangroves, but endeavoring to also protect coral reefs that are facing environmental pressures that are susceptible to climate change. Women in particular play a very big role in the seascape in fisheries and aquaculture, and therefore are also an important focus for us. So I'll go straight to the topic at hand, gender inequalities in aquaculture. I'm talking about the gender inequalities and why they matter. When you look at the research from the World Fish Center, this is 2014, but I'm sure it's probably recently, women accounted for about 50% of the workforce in fisheries and aquaculture, when the secondary elements such as processing and trading are included. They play a crucial role across the whole supply chain, be it as producers or processors, traders or consumers. And this reliance is very significant because when you look at the sectors and the number of livelihoods that they support, approximately 10 to 20% of the world's population, and these are central to global food and nutrition, you realize that this participation and contribution by women matters. And they faced very tough constraints despite of that. Their contributions are often informal, undervalued, unpaid, overlooked due to unwritten rules and norms that have generally put men in charge of decisions and livelihoods, leaving women to carry a disproportionate amount of labor and care burdens with much less access to resources and information and technology. And they face even tougher constraints in accessing information, finance and technical services, and markets, and less access really normally over control of natural resource of the land and other assets. So in general, you find that women are facing tough constraints. And why is this happening? What are those underlying causes? World Fish looks at 3 different ones. There's the formal policies, the policies that fail to create enabling environments required for women to equitably benefit from these resources. There's the semi-formal systems, the data systems that do not account for women's contributions and extension services. And therefore, when you're not included in the data, your contribution is not really counted. You're not counted as real fishers or real farmers. And then the informal ones, just that burden of unpaid household work that I've talked about, and the lack of support from family and community and government. It impedes the ability for women to live healthy and productive lives. So how then do we bridge this gender gap is the question. And there's a lot of work being done here. I know World Fish is leading a lot of work, but also others. And 4 things really come out in terms of what we should be doing as gender transformative approaches and getting out of the business as usual. And they talk about mainstreaming gender equality among the small-scale fishers in global food systems, so making sure that in that system gender equality is recognized, but also elevating the visibility and leadership qualities of women actors. There are many women that are doing this. How do we raise their visibility so that they are recognized? Empowering the involvement in the food production systems, and also recognizing that the sector is hard hit by climate change, is putting in place gender equal innovations that mitigate this. So I have a couple of examples that I want to talk about. There's a very good example in Kenya This one is looking at really how women in aquaculture actually promote peace and stability. 75% of Kenyan population is involved in the agriculture sector, especially women. Yet they only own 1% of the land, and some very little percent. But this has not discouraged them from embracing the business of fish farming through something that they call table banking, called as chamas. This is a round-robin system of saving and lending money that many women do around the world. They have been empowered to invest in the aquaculture sector, particularly in processing and trading. And they've had some success in promoting women's empowerment. According to a Swedish International Development Corporation agency, you see that the sector has promoted a growing economy and a way for women to contribute sustainable peace, especially in places in these fragile areas and post-conflict areas. And then an aquaculture business development program funded by IFAD also shows promoting women and youth, shows that fish farming is a crucial part now of the region's growing economy and a significant part of women's economic independence. And it has assisted in peace building and stabilization by improving food security. So something that you probably hadn't thought about is that the sector actually can support peace and stability in areas. Another interesting example is how it has mitigated the impacts of COVID-19, particularly mitigating the impacts of COVID-19 for the African women. As you can imagine, COVID-19 forced many, many women to adapt their livelihoods to cope with the many disruptions that came across. You couldn't go to market, the roads were closed, there were lockdowns, and women found ways to cope by utilizing communication technologies, but some of them also formed social networks and relied on social networks. One such example is the AWF FishNet network that provides a platform for women fish processors and traders across the African continent to collaborate and supporting each other, sharing best practices, experience, and technology. And this network draws its members from 28 countries in Africa, all the way from Algeria to Zambia, and has been instrumental in supporting women to cope with pandemic-associated losses. Another example, this one away from Africa, is an example from Bangladesh, and this is the work that has been done by the World Fish Ecofish Initiative on women's participation and influence in fisheries governance. And this really is around elevating women's actors, as I mentioned earlier, and making them more visible. And what they've done is, through a bottom-up approach and inclusive community engagement of both fishermen and fisherwomen, they included them in the decision-making process. And then they also adopted strategic approaches such as finance and savings groups and co-management committees and training. And we saw this fisherwomen's contribution to their family and community become even more visible, and the women's position in household improving, and many other examples. Another important one is data, and I talked about that, the lack of data, the lack of gender disaggregated data of women's involvement has actually, in general, limited the ability of policy and programs to help these women. So this disaggregated data is a key step to a more gender-inclusive response. Now, one example that particularly Wild Fish is working on with support from the Gates Foundation is the Women Empowerment in Fisheries and Aquaculture Index. And what that does, it measures the empowerment agency and women in fisheries and aquaculture, and particularly in their projects, but can also be used widely, and identifies ways for research and policymakers to overcome gender disparity obstacles and constraints in food system. I know the new version of this is going to be released and will be very useful to show what success that has made. I will stop there for now. I just wanted to give you some few things to think about and throw some examples. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Alice, for sharing your perspectives with us. I really like the real-world examples. It's quite impactful. For the audience, please remember to leave your questions in the Q&A box, and we will address them after the presentations. Alice, if you need to leave, I can try and put them in touch with you and get their questions answered. Thank you. Our next speaker.
That will be fantastic.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Teresa Garzon, who has 12 years experience in the fishery industry in Scotland. Alongside her research in fresh and seawater fish health and salmon production, she is the chair of Women in Scottish Aquaculture. Thank you, Teresa. We look forward to hearing more about your activities.
Hello, wait a sec, I'm trying to, can you see the presentation?
Yep, we can see that.
And need to find it. I also trying to get my video up, but I kind of, I'm sorry. For some reason, sorry, I can't find the window. It's not great.
Is it not on the left-hand corner?
Yeah, it's not, I know where it is normally. I don't know what's happening.
Okay,
just when you need it.
No problem. Maybe try to go ahead without the video. That's fine.
Yeah, I'll try. If you can see the presentation, I've been working in Scotland in the world of aquaculture for 12 years. What I'm doing and what I've been asked to talk a little bit is what I'm chairing at the moment, which is the Women in Scottish Aquaculture organization. And we are based in Scotland. For Scotland, aquaculture is an increasingly important industry, helping to sustain the economic growth in the country. So it is one of the best, is the most important, the top food export, and support 8,000 jobs in Scotland. One of the things that since I started to work in the world of aquaculture is been the lack of women representation in the industry, even though it has changed massively in the last 10 years, 12 years. It still is a minority, and I think it still is something that many women do not consider as a career. And because we are in Scotland in a very remote places, many of the women do not have other options to work. So what we wanted to do with WISA, it was to put the aquaculture there for other women to consider, to see role models, etc. Our background is, WISA was only launched in 2019, and it was through the Sustainable Aquaculture Innovation Center that performed a survey and within the women in the industry, and we just came out with most of the women working there will benefit, and we're quite keen on having a group of support. I think this is also, it was a reflection of how we felt for so many years, just being a minority within. The same could happen. We're trying with WISA, we're always trying to get both sides of it. So there's other jobs that is the opposite, but we think supporting each other when we can't is important. The network is funded by the Scottish Government, and also the industry, the producers and the supply chain has been funding our activities. And as I said, the Sustainable Aquaculture Innovation Center, they provide all the marketing support. WISA has a diverse and active advisory group that we get together every 2 months. This is part of the people that works for WISA. We are all volunteers, and we try to have a little bit more men in our organization as well. Listen to all the things everybody needs to input, basically, as I said, it's open for men and women to join WISA and promote this diversity in the industry. is not only to promote the diversity in the industry, and we try to encourage more women. We also try to support the woman that is already working in the aquaculture world. So this is our mission, and the way we do it, I'll explain in a moment. So we try to raise awareness of the opportunities for women. As I said, this is something that many women don't even consider as a career. It's been for many years considered a man's job to feed the fish, and to be honest, even when I started like 12 years ago, there was no when I visited sites, there was no even wellies or waterproofs of my size. You know, there was small things happening that it's very small compared to other problems, but it was just indications of how it was not supported for women to access to this, or it was not something that was happening. So we also provide with events, provide a network. We consider that this is very important. We help each other between the women that are part of the organization, but we also try to provide this network with producers and other management, which so far most of them are men, but the network, it was only between men as well. And now we are just expanding this. And of course, what we want is support the industry, as we believe that a more diverse industry is a gain for everyone and for the industry. This is with just a slide. This is part of people that we work on this. My name. I don't know. Sorry, I don't know if I introduced. Well, yeah, I was introduced, but I'm chairing the organization. I've been chairing it for the last 2 years. And since then, we've been doing a lot of activities. As you know, COVID happened as well. So all our activities, from coffee mornings, meetings, and conferences, they all had to go into what we're doing right now as well, and online. But this group of people is a group of people that volunteers, and we get together, as I said, every 2 months. We plan activities with the target that with targets that I was explaining earlier. This is our webpage. So you can see we have news and events where we talk about what we're going to do. You can find who is part of WISA, how to contact us. We do have a newsletter. So we send newsletters with all the activities to everyone, men and women that sign on for the newsletter. We have a section with opportunities where you can check on for jobs, and we have a forum that we use as a safe space for everyone to say their needs or what they expect from WISA, or what if they're looking for jobs, or their worries as a woman in the industry, for example. So anything is the forum is that safe space that we created for our community of women here. As examples of activities, we have our Facebook page, and now we have 300 members. We made a series of videos, New Wave of Talent campaign, where we just there were several videos of the women working in the aquaculture, and it's been in different conferences and etc. So and out in schools as well, and other local events within villages around Scotland, to just show, you know, that there are women working in the aquaculture, and that is normal, that we work also in the aquaculture world. We do, as I said, we have our coffee breaks, coffee mornings, what we call, and we choose a subject where we present. One of us leads the session, and we just try to get other women's opinions on specific things that we think are important in our world in Scotland in aquaculture. We do workshops, so we don't only talk about let's say problems. We also work with we provide workshops with technical subjects about the aquaculture, fish health, etc. And we, in our web, we published interviews of men and women working in the industry just to show role models and to celebrate success of women working in the industry. We do have now, after 12 years since I started, women working in management and in top roles, which is very nice to see. But it's still a minority, and still, in spite of living in what we are the first world or something, and the perception is not. It's quite biased, I would say. And on the 8th of March, so next week, we have a celebration of the International Women's Days, and we're actually all getting together in a hotel in Edinburgh, and we're going to have networking and a workshop. We have managed, since the creation of WISA, we have done mentoring programs, and we've managed to get success on a group of 30 women with a startup in a company, a startup in an aquaculture company. So there is some outcomes out of that, and we're pleased to see success like that through events like mentoring programs that we've been putting out there. And well, that's basically a little bit what I was just saying before. We tried to have all of these networks events, and here in the photo you've got a minister there, and we have a lot of support from the Scottish government, and this is really nice to see. They do support our organization. As I said at the beginning as well, aquaculture for Scotland is the top food export. So there is an interest, of course, an economical financial interest in the industry, but it's nice to see that it's also a good interest and support in gender equality. That's our future, and what we've tried to, where we're going to try to work on in the future, and is encourage more women, support the ones that are working in the industry already, identify the barriers, and ensure equal opportunities. This means that we do look out for equal opportunities and no extra favors. Sometimes we have these some sort of people, and sometimes commenting that we are looking for maybe some I don't what's the word? Is it positive? Yeah, but we are not looking for anything but equality. And I think I don't know if I've put it now in one of the slides, but one of the outcomes that came from one of our coffee breaks, where we were talking about maternity and paternity policies, it was a change on this in one of the biggest industries in some of the salmon producers. And this is not only good for women, this is also good for men that have the opportunity to have more time, if they choose to, with their families. So that's the type of equality we're looking for in WISA, and the way we do it, I think, is as you can see in the slide, working in raising awareness on all of this and celebrating the success that we are already having. And how to get involved with WISA is we've got Facebook, Instagram, and then of course our web with any WISA networking events, and subscribe for in our forum and newsletter. This is some of the industry. This is just, I just leave it there because this is the last slide for me. But this is one of some of the comments of people that is already working in the industry, some advice or encouragement from for other women to get into the industry. I think in Scotland, we're a small community working in aquaculture, and I think we're quite lucky, as it is a nice supportive community, and we're finding WISA is being supported very positively. And yeah, so that's the work we do, and that's me.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you so much, Tanya. I see you've shared the link in the chat as well if you want to learn more about WISA. Teresa, I believe you also need to get going after your talk.
Yes, I'm gonna have to. Did I stop sharing now?
It still seems to be sharing.
I'm gonna have a problem. I might have to disconnect.
There we go. There we go. It's stopped sharing now. Maybe just before you leave, we do have a question for you in the Q&A. I know we
manage the video finally.
There we go. Yeah, I know we're having the Q&A session in the end, but seeing as you are still around, somebody is saying, Kat Lop is saying that they created a group of women in Brazilian aquaculture, which is still in the beginning phases. But it's very gratifying to see more and more women engaged in this profession. Their question is, do you have any kind of funding?
We do, and we get the funding. We got initial funding when it was set up in 2019 from the Scottish government. One of the good things is WISA was funded and supported by the Sustainable Aquaculture Institute Innovation Centre, which had a lot of political connections. So I think it's important if you get networking for that and get close to politicians that can get some funding, and also the industry. So all of us were working in different companies, and we all knocked doors and asked for money. And it was good. It was a good. We had a good feedback. Of course, we need to keep always finding this money, because we do organize these workshops for women. No, as I said, also technical, or how to come back to work, and so we do workshops on how to perform in an interview, or financial workshops for women to learn and refresh. And feel more confident to come back to work, for example, after maternity, or feel more comfortable to get and initiate a job in the world of aquaculture.
Okay, well, that's great. And then one more question is somebody asking out of curiosity, what are the primary species grown in Scotland?
Well, the main one is salmon. So that will produce approximately 170,000 tons of salmon. After that, it will be trout, rainbow trout. And then we do have mussel production, and there's we have in Scotland, we've got the Scottish Association of Marine Science, and they are now promoting a lot of seaweed, and is working very close with African countries for this. So there is a seaweed aquaculture industry growing as well, and also very supported by the government.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Then I think we can move on to our next speaker. So we were meant to have a talk now by Professor Edna Ferreira Alencar, but she is stuck in the Amazon without signal, so won't be joining us today. Making our next speaker Liz Johndrow from the woman-run company Atlantic Sea Farms, where she cultivates native mussels, scallops, and kelp in the Gulf of Maine through regenerative aquaculture, and also has experience in collaborating with various research institutes, networks for farmers, and coastal communities. Thank you, Liz.
Hi, thank you for that great introduction, Marissa. Happy to be joining all of you today. Let me get my screen up to share. Let's start from the beginning. Okay, while this is loading, I'm going to be talking to you today about my company, Atlantic Sea Farms, that I work for, and we're going to discuss a little bit about fishermen learning to farm. So my name is Liz Johndrow. In the past, I have worked, as was mentioned, with mussels, scallops, lobsters, but right now our company focuses primarily on seaweed and growing 2 species of kelp, sugar kelp and skinny kelp in the Gulf of Maine. I've been working for roughly the past decade in fisheries and sustainable aquaculture. And in most of my experiences, like the speakers before me, have been one of an only woman on a boat or in a meeting room or in a conversation that's revolved around seafood or the marine economy. So it's really special to hear all of your wisdom today and similar experiences. One thing I want to highlight about our company right off the bat is our amazing CEO, Brianna Warner. She has taken over in 2018 and is currently still in our position as CEO. We are women run, we're a mission-driven company, and we're vertically integrated, which allows us to handle our supply chain and also work with partner fishermen farmers in the Gulf of Maine to grow all of our seaweed products. We're located in Maine, as I've mentioned, on the East Coast, and we work with farmers along the entire coastline, 27 to be exact right now. And that number has grown from about 3 to 4 in the past 4 or 5 years. So we've been seeing a lot of interest in our coastal economy and a lot of people stepping up, working to diversify their coastal economies right now. I'm going to highlight a little bit about kelp right now and some of the exciting things that we really see has potential to move forward in our industry. We're a first of our kind partner farmer network, and we're the first company bringing fresh, domestically line-grown seaweed to consumers in the US. Kelp is a superfood that has naturally high levels of iodine, calcium, antioxidants, potassium, iron, and folic acid. Most of our products are fermented, which also are high in gut healthy probiotics. And recent studies show that marine algae have the potential to help in defense of Alzheimer's, depression, and many forms aid in weight loss as well. It's good for Maine's fishermen. This is the piece that we're going to talk about, and specifically one of our farmers that's championed the kelp industry, Karen Cooper. I'm really excited to talk about her. Kelp is great for Maine fishermen and our coastal economies because right now we're actually reliant on a single monoculture of lobster, which has never been a typical use in heritage fisheries in Maine before. So this is a position that's very volatile at the moment and deserves diversification. Our company provides supplemental and diversified income, and this is done through recruiting partner farmers, providing free seed from our state-of-the-art cultivation center. We provide free hands-on technical on-the-water service, and that's my primary role at the company, is working with our farmers and being on the water with them, teaching them to farm, working with their permitting and licensing. And we also have a 100% buyback guarantee, which removes a lot of the risk for our farmers growing a crop and then at the end of the season not having a buyer for their product. So this is a direct to market line for our fishermen that is seasonally agreed upon, so everybody has the freedom to come and go as they please, although we never really see anybody leave once they join our network, which is exciting for us. Right now, our farmers produce 90% of all the line-grown kelp in the domestic US, or in Maine, excuse me, and 80% in the domestic US currently. I also want to highlight the fact that kelp is great for the environment and our oceans. It is a regenerative zero input crop that requires no fertilizer, pesticides, feed, soil, or fresh water. It purifies the water and removes carbon and nitrogen to locally mitigate some of the effects of coastal ocean acidification, and creates seasonal habitat for spawning fish, and also helps shellfish production. So needless to say, I have so many good things to say about seaweeds, but on to the people that grow them. All of our farmers are in the clean, cold waters in the Gulf of Maine. This is really an area that's nutrient dense, holding in temperature, and is close to shore, so it's easily accessible for our farmers. To give a more open idea of kind of how our fisheries have worked in the past, there have been multiple species to diversify into. As you can see on the 1995 section, going to 2005, lobster primarily dominates the industry. And today in 2022, that number is even larger than in the past recent years. Here you can see the migration patterns of lobster in the recent past, and how most of the populations are moving northward as temperatures are changing. It's important for me to know that the Gulf of Maine is one of the areas in the world that the temperature in the ocean is rising 99% faster than anywhere else. So we're seeing a lot of changes in our coastal economy and in our nearshore fisheries. This is definitely representative of all of the people that we work with in our farming network. Here's where the story really gets good. This is Karen Cooper. Karen Cooper is the first commercial seaweed farmer in the United States and was the first person to work with our company. This is almost a decade ago now today, and she still is currently farming with us and anticipating to harvest around 10,000 pounds of kelp in the next month or so. Karen Cooper is from an island that is primarily seasonal with tourists. She is a generational fisherman. Fisherman, I should also note, is a term that is used for all genders. Most women and non-binary people associate themselves as lobstermen. It's socially acceptable and they choose that terminology. So that's why we use it and refer to them as such. Karen Cooper primarily learned how to fish for lobsters from her father. And her father is a very well-respected man in the industry. And so she was able to gain social collateral to get into kelp farming and trying a new industry. She has really paved the way for most of our other farmers that have joined our network. The next being Jody and Alex. Jody and Alex are a couple that farm seaweed together and had to diversify after working mostly in shrimp fisheries, which have closed due to depleted stocks. So kelp farming is a wonderful transition for fishermen also, because it is done in their off season. Kelp farming is traditionally done in the fall, November, and then harvested in the spring in April and May. So it's a seasonal crop that doesn't take multiple years to grow. It's an easy entry barrier for fishermen as well, because they have all of the equipment that is traditionally needed. They have boats, they have ropes, they have buoys, and they know the ocean environment. So they're the best stewards of their area and also of the shared users that they work with. Once we were able to start our network with very strong women, we were able to then add on other men in the industry, because that is traditionally who occupies this space, as most of us already know and have heard today. We work collaboratively with 27 partner farmers right now, and we only have 4 of those farmers that are women. And that is mostly because those are the people that represent the industry. In 2019, 80% of all the aquaculture licenses in the state of Maine were held by men. And that's a statistic that was created by the Maine Aquaculture Association. Something that's promising, however, is that in May of 2020, it was documented that at least a third of the LPA license holders were women in the state of Maine. There's a growing interest, demand, and need for diversification, and also an understanding of a presence of women on the working waterfront. One woman I would love to highlight from the US that's doing great work in aquaculture that isn't part of our network. She's located in a different state in Maryland. Her name is Imani Black, and she has a company and runs a mission that's called Minorities in Aquaculture. And she's doing immense work in our country to diversify the presence of women and people of color, and working primarily from what I've learned of her experiences with children, education, students that are in inner city schools and urban communities. So there's a lot of great work being done in the US. And I would love to see more of that done in the state of Maine. We are the whitest state in the country, so it is difficult for us to find people that don't live in the state, find people that aren't in the state. But there are a lot of women in the country working on this as well. I should also state that there are 6,000 license holders for the commercial lobster fishery in the state of Maine currently, most of which will be easily able to make the transition into kelp farming. So right now we have 27 partner farmers, but that number is growing rapidly and has the exponential potential to expand and continue expanding. Most of our farmers right now operate on 4 acres or roughly 1.5 hectares of farm space. And in total throughout our entire network, only occupy 85 acres or 34 hectares of space in the ocean environment. So they use such a small footprint of space to produce a high yield of biomass product. And that's one of the reasons also that kelp farming fits very well into the state of Maine and our coastal economy uses. We're going to go a little bit more into how Atlantic Sea Farms helps facilitate these farmers make the transition into kelp. I mentioned earlier that we are vertically integrated, so we produce all of the seed starts and we help the farmers go all the way to harvest. This is something that isn't done necessarily in terrestrial agriculture or in a lot of aquaculture settings in general. So we feel very strongly that this has opened the opportunity for most of our farmers to enter the industry, and hope that this makes it easier for especially women to enter, knowing that the primary reasons that they don't enter the industry right now are because of initial capital costs, infrastructure, having a boat, something that will cost you anywhere from $50,000 to $500,000 to have something of actual capital and reliable usage for a scaled farm. We also see that less women enter the industry because they can't get financial leases from banks and financing that is needed for an entrepreneur to get into a business. Brianna Warner has been one of the leaders in this way, because something that she really focuses on is fundraising and working on gaining funds to get fishermen into the industry, which is something that is not necessarily an easy task by any means. Something that is also very appealing about seaweed aquaculture is that it has a very short time frame in terms of growing species. It takes about 1 month to produce all of the spores and inoculated twine that ultimately end up on the farm. This happens in our cultivation center. And then I'll give you a little brief video. This is those schools being deployed on a farm. This is one of the women that we've worked with in the past to train. I love this video because you can see her hair, you can see her jewelry. So there's a lot of characteristics to see. This is just a brief outline of what a farm looks like to give you a little bit of context of what we're asking people to do out on the water. And a lot of things that women respond with is, well, am I strong enough? Am I capable enough? Can I move that heavy equipment? And everything here is typically built by hand, and is capable for a woman to do. So we definitely work with training people in terms of what they physically are capable of doing and accessing using equipment. Here's an aerial view to give you more of a scope of what these farms look like. Something that's really creative that we found is that even though women don't necessarily have all of the physical strength that men do in the industry, they typically get more creative and also more innovative to make the same things possible. Our kelp is only about a 9-month crop, so you can see a brief overlap of what that product looks like growing out on the lines. All the way on the right-hand side of your screen is a full-blown kelp line ready for harvest. So this is what our farmers are really looking for and excited to see in the spring months. As you can see in these pictures, all of these crews are run by men. But something I want to highlight that isn't photographed is that all of these men have wives and daughters that are typically always on the boat with them. A lot of the behind the scenes farming that is done in our industry is with a family in mind. The lobster fishery is typically all individual families, owner operated model, which gives the individual more control and also more access to their farm. And we see this a lot, that the women will do all of the leasing paperwork. They'll do all the submissions behind the scenes to make the farm possible. But then on the other hand, we also get them out on the boats. They're harvesting, they have their daughters and their kids also involved. Seaweed and lobstering is a family business in Maine, and that's something that we very much support and in all aspects work to get more women involved on the actual farming side of things. Just because we saw so many beautiful pictures of kelp that was being grown, this is ultimately what the products are turned into. On the back of our product labels as well, we highlight all of our farmers with their individual pictures and stories. So there's a sense of ownership there that our farmers have with the product itself, which gives great sense of purpose and pride with the work that they do on the water, and then also reflected in the products that are created. Thank you for listening and also for your time and engagement. I'm going to end my presentation here and am available for any questions. Please feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn or my email below. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Liz. Yeah, it was really great to see the active involvement of women in aquaculture through your network. Yeah, please remember to leave your questions in the Q&A box, and then we will address them after the presentations. Our next and final speaker is Nurat Atoba from Nigeria, a successful fish farmer from BT Farms, which was established in 2005. She is also acting as a focal point person for women empowerment and mainstreaming into aquaculture in collaboration with ASTRAL. Thank you, Nurat. You can share your screen.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Nurat Atoba. I'll be talking to you on capacity building, women empowerment, and mainstreaming in aquaculture in Nigeria. Fisheries and aquaculture are important livelihood activities in Nigeria, as about 40% of average Nigerian depends on fish as major protein intake and as an important food commodity. Aquaculture production in Nigeria is fast-growing industry and is the second largest aquaculture producing country in Africa after Egypt. The major species culture is African catfish in addition to tilapia, carps, shrimps, heterotis. There is need to diversify into other species and also adopt polyculture and IMTA, which is an integrated multi-tropics aquaculture. Most women are more involved in fish processing and marketing in aquaculture in Nigeria like their counterpart elsewhere. Major factors mitigating against their mainstreaming into aquaculture includes low skills, capacity development, lack of access to land and credit, among others. The engagement of more women in aquaculture production will involve improving their skills and competence in aquaculture production through education, empowerment, easy access to land and credit. Most women that are more involved in processing and marketing in aquaculture in Nigeria, like their counterpart elsewhere. You can see in the picture here, we have some of our women that are into processing, the filleting of fish. That's the training going on in this picture. It's most of the women, we are more involved in the processing and the more than the production. So there is need for us to do the mainstreaming into aquaculture production. I started fish farming in 2005 because of my passion for food production. And it's so interesting watching my fish grow into table size. I went through a series of aquaculture training to get myself equipped for a successful fish farming venture. Being the CEO of BT Farms, Lagos, Nigeria, an integrated fish farming outfit, which involved fish breeding, which is fingerlings production, table size fish production, brood stock production, and fish processing. Our annual production is about 40 tons of fresh catfish, and we also aggregate for other fish farmers who are members of our association. In the picture, you can see where I was feeding the fish at the farm and where I was training somebody on how to feed the fish. That is a pictorial illustration there. Based on my experience, a series of activities, and my involvement in aquaculture practices and training of farmers, especially women, I emerged as the president of Catfish Farmers Association of Nigeria, CAFAN Lagos chapter. I am also the vice president, Southwest Zone of Catfish Farmers Association of Nigeria, and I'm presently the focal point person for ASTRAL Nigeria Institute for Oceanography and Marine Research, NEOMAD project of women empowerment and mainstreaming into aquaculture. In this, the picture one, you can see our activities there, where I was training women on how to feed fish. That is in the first picture. They are new trainees, so I was training them on how to feed fish. In this picture two, we're doing the grading and selection. I was showing them how to handle fish, how to select, and to be able to differentiate between male and female catfish. In the picture number three, that is our cage culture on the lagoon, where we culture tilapia, catfish, and some other fish species. And here we can see some wheat there. That is IMTA that we are trying to practice here. So there's no, we don't allow anything to waste. That is the integrated multi-tropic aquaculture. In the picture four, that's a processing of fish egg. That is part of the products of our farm. So that's what I display in that picture. There are many programs put in place in the country to fully develop the aquaculture sector and engage the citizen in the commercial production, especially the women folks. Some of the programs include, among others, cage culture in natural water bodies, table fish and brood stocks production, training on water quality management, fish health and record keeping, training on modern hatcheries technology and artificial breeding, breeding of other native species of fish other than catfish, aqua feed production, aquaculture as a business venture, and financial management, and others. In this picture, you can see the cages where we are growing the fish on the water body. This has the production of different species of fish. And some of the women are there, the marketers, to buy the tilapia fish. And then some of the women groups too, they are there to learn more on how to culture fish on the water body. Nigeria spends a huge sum of foreign exchange, about $1 billion annually, for fish importation to augment local supply. There is great potential for aquaculture production, as our annual requirement is about 2.5 million tons, but annual aquaculture production is still very low, at about 360,000 tons, 16,000 tons, according to Federal Department of Fisheries record 2015. Women constitute about 40% of the farming population in developing countries, and in fisheries, they are fully involved in processing and marketing in Nigeria. They are still to boost local fish production by mainstreaming women into aquaculture production to ensure food security, create employment opportunity for women, boost their financial income to support homes and families, and earn foreign exchange through exports. Here is a training that was carried out on the FTT processing cane for women, which was sponsored by FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization. So you can see the women, it's basically women empowerment training for women processing, women on processing. And here in this picture is where we are having a training. Women means training into aquaculture, means training into climate change mitigation and adaptation. The women there are farmers, but not basically aquaculture farmers. They are all farmers where we did the mainstreaming training on climate change and the mitigation and adaptation, whereby those who are engaged in a particular form of farming can try other things if they are having issue with climate change, getting high productivity from their particular farming techniques. ASTRAL Project will organize a workshop for women empowerment and mainstreaming in aquaculture production in Nigeria. And this will be done through sensitization, mobilization, and recruitment of women into aquaculture production. Meeting with women in existing farmers associations, sensitizing and creating awareness on aquaculture production. Formation of women fish farmers group within existing fish commodities-based organizations like Catfish Farmers Association of Nigeria, Tilapia Association of Nigeria, and others. Promotion of integrated multitropic aquaculture, where there will be no wastage at all, that everything will be useful, including the feed and all the fish with the multiculture, we will be able to maximize our profits. This will be done through workshops, seminars, radio jingle, television shows, and various means of communication and demonstrations. Organization of regular aquaculture trainings, seminars, and workshops for women on best practices in all the aquaculture value chains. Formation of women fish farmers clusters, as well as strong cooperatives for easy access to credit and farmlands to improve their livelihoods and productivity. Diversification of women involvement in the aquaculture production to include fingerlings, table fish, broodstock, and foodstuffs production. A lot of women in the 36 states of Nigeria and Federal Capital Territory will be involved. Creation of social media platforms, linkages, and networking among women fish farmers for knowledge sharing and interactions. This will inspire women to acknowledge their values, chase their goals, and enhance gender equality. In conclusion, women folks have performed well in fish processing and marketing in aquaculture sector in Nigeria. Women mainstreaming into aquaculture in the country will not be a difficult task if their skills and competence are improved through capacity and skill development. Organization of aquaculture training workshops, networking, and empowerment targeting women specifically will greatly enhance their participation in aquaculture production and boost the local production in Nigeria and globally. I'm grateful to ASTRAL Neoma for nominating me as the focal point person for the campaign on mainstreaming women into aquaculture in Nigeria. Thank you for listening. God bless you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, good luck with all the workshops and wishing you all the success with that. We do have a couple of questions in the Q&A here. Perhaps I will just start with questions directed to Nurat. How do you get funding to keep going with fish farming? This question was directed to an earlier speaker, but I believe that you have experience in this as well.
Yeah, funding is an issue, but we are trying to get funding through donor agencies and then through liaising with financial institutions, but actually an issue for farmers to access funding in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and then the next question to you is, what are the challenges encountered on the general practice in your farm? Are there any support for women in aquaculture?
Yeah, we have, there's need for more capacity building for women to have enough knowledge in the modern production technology in aquaculture. And I think that will be better if we include it in the mainstreaming and capacity building of women in aquaculture.
Yeah, hopefully it's something that improves over time with all the workshops and sort of outreach things to improve that as well. Okay, and then we do have a question here for Liz. The question was about asking, what do you mean by domestically grown? I think this was with regards to something quite early in your presentation.
Yeah, so when we say domestically grown, we mean grown in the US, so domestic to us. In terms of where we produce and distribute the kelp crop. But that mostly is in reference to other parts of the world where primarily seaweed farming is done in lots of parts of Asia. So it's just a new to market and new industry right now in the US.
And then in terms of climate variability or hurricanes, how vulnerable does this make the seaweed aquaculture?
That's a great question, especially as our coastal environment changes. Right now, our farms are located inshore, close to shore waters, mostly in protected environments, and they're small scale. So we don't see a large opportunity for destructive measures in terms of farms that might be sited in offshore or more energetic conditions. But there is always an opportunity for weather to have its way with equipment in the ocean. So that's mostly why we work with people that are capable mariners and are very comfortable and skilled with the equipment and the setting of the gear and structure in the ocean. Thank you.
Yeah, kelp aquaculture is also in very early stages in South Africa, and I think we have a similar worry about the weather and the conditions. So thank you so much. That's all the questions for the session. Thank you so much for all our speakers, for your insights. It was really wonderful to hear about your lived experiences and the passion that you have for our topic today, one that lies close to my heart. I'll end off the session by just reminding our audience to check out the links shared throughout the session in the chat to find out more about all the great organizations that were presented today, and about ASTRAL and our pledge to women empowerment in aquaculture. And then on behalf of the Air Centre and ASTRAL, thank you for joining us today and wish you a great day further.